Good morning. Welcome to worship with the community of the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. I'm the Reverend Sherry Woodbury, settled minister of this congregation. First Unitarian Church of Omaha is a community of many genders and sexualities, a community of diverse cultural and racial and class backgrounds, a community of different abilities and gifts, and of course, all ages. Some here find inspiration in the great books, others in the great outdoors, and others still in great conversation. I heard some inspiration down in the common room earlier that had to do with great jokes. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. A special welcome to those who join us as visitors today, whether online or in person. I want to remind those who are here in the sanctuary to wear your name tag if you have one, so that folks who don't already know you or maybe haven't seen you in person in a while can put your face and name together. And if you don't have a pre-made name tag, you can use one of the sticky ones, and we can get you, one of the hard ones. For those online, if your name is not already showing up there in your face box, you can rename yourself in Zoom, which is also helpful for those joining you that way. As we build and rebuild community, a never-ending process, it is good to learn names and faces. And as your minister that came during the pandemic, I appreciate that myself. This week, as every week, we acknowledge and honor that where we meet for worship as the First Unitarian Church of Omaha is the land of the Omaha Oto Nations, and that Indigenous people in the greater community have become marginalized and made invisible. May we recognize their presence among us and work with them to resolve issues like poverty, displaced children, and murdered and missing Indigenous women, MMIW. Our theme for November is Holding History. This morning we explore what might help us move through our personal and collective histories of trauma so that we can be more fully alive in the present. As we get started, I invite you to try a very simple action that can help settle our bodies and sync us up. Please rise if it's comfortable for you to do so, whether you're here or at home. And we're just gonna rub our bellies for about 15 seconds. Give your Buddha belly a little love. We're here. That's all okay, slow and gentle. Yeah. Oh, you're also beautiful. All right, thank you. You may sit. Enter this sanctuary of pillars and pews and light, aware of spaces between bodies, of faces under masks. Enter the sanctuary through precious metals, ones and zeros of devices, cocooned at home and yet here. Enter this community whether you desire connection or distrust it, or both. Enter whether you feel hopeful or lonely, awkward or joyful, numb or overcome. Bring your frozen and scared parts. Bring your angry and tight parts. Bring the sharp and the hazy memories. Bring your broken hearts. This place can hold recent hurts and ancestral history. This place can hold the muscled layers of your mystery. Come, lay your burdens down and be. Come on in and sit there at the back. And I invite those who would like to close your eyes for a moment. We're going to get in our bodies today, if you couldn't tell. And we don't always know if we can hug other people these days. You can always hug me, but you can hug yourself. Give yourself a nice hug. Wrap your arms around you if that feels good to you. If you're at home without your mask like me, you can even give yourself a little kiss. It's all right. All right. This morning, Linda and John Ruska will light the chalice here in the sanctuary. Come on forward. And those who are joining us from home, if you have a chalice or a candle there, you can light yours as well. We light this chalice, lamp of our heritage, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. Thank you, John and Linda. We have the pleasure today, I've been waiting for this moment, of welcoming our church choir, the Sanctuary Singers, back into the sanctuary for the first time since the pandemic started. Come on up. In case you're wondering, all of our singers participating at this time are vaccinated, and they'll keep their masks on, except for possible future exceptions of soloists and our director who needs to communicate with his singers. They're going to sing for us a piece called Homeward Bound. Welcome home, choir. Thank you, Sanctuary Singers. We have a story for all ages this morning from Christina Strong as she and the children join us. Come on in.
Ages today. We're a little short on some of our ages. We do have a classroom full of teens downstairs deeply engrossed in their activity for the day. And perhaps we have some elementary children joining us from home as well. And this is a great story for everyone.
Would you welcome some big kids to come sit on the floor if they want to join?
Oh, yes, young at heart, come join us. Great. All right. All right, well, today's story is Whitney's Heavy Things, and it's adapted from a picture book with a similar name written by Julie Crowless. And the kind of heavy things that we're talking about are when your feelings are heavy, right? So you know how stones can be heavy and luggage can be heavy, but sometimes your feelings can have a physical sensation like a tightness in your chest and a slump on your shoulders, because they can feel heavy too. Whitney's heavy things were weighing them down. They knew they needed to do something, but they didn't know what. "I will hide them," they said. So Whitney swept the heavy things under the rug. But then they tripped over them when they went to answer the phone. "I will hide them in a tree," Whitney said. So they hoisted the heavy things onto a branch. But the next time they walked by, the heavy things fell. "I will fly them high in the sky for the clouds to swallow," they said. So Whitney attached the heavy things to their kite. But when a big gust of wind came along, the kite didn't move. The things were too heavy. "I will float them in the sea," they said. So Whitney made a boat and placed the heavy things in it. But the heavy things sank the boat, and Whitney stubbed their toe the next time they went swimming. "I will just pretend they're not there," Whitney said. So they went about their day, trying to ignore the heavy things. But Whitney was too weighed down. Their feet and heart were heavy, their eyes filled with tears. Try as they might, Whitney just couldn't make the heavy things disappear. "Maybe I'm trying to deal with too many heavy things at once," Whitney said. They took the first heavy thing and looked at it carefully. They had an idea. They could break the heavy things into smaller pieces. So they did, and with these pieces, they made marbles for their best friend. And then Whitney broke up the second heavy thing and planted the pieces in the garden, where they grew into a beautiful peach tree. Whitney used pieces of the third heavy thing to build steps to see over the tallest wall. After breaking up the fourth heavy thing, Whitney began to feel lighter, so much lighter that they could swim faster than ever. And they kept the pieces of the last heavy thing as a reminder not to get weighed down by heavy things. Thank you.
Thank you for the story. We have an eighth principle moment for you this morning, as we've been doing periodically, and today Della Bynum will share that with you. As she's coming forward, I'll mention, since you're seeing me without my mask, and I'll even be singing later, I've recently been boosted, so I'm trying to protect all of you.
Good morning. What if dismantling racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions could be accomplished in part by individual healing trauma? I believe that these threads, the healing within one person, the building of a beloved community in this church, and the making whole of our society are indeed woven together. One of the fascinating findings of a relatively recent field of trauma studies is that trauma can be generational. For example, scientists have found that Holocaust survivors not only exhibit a legacy of trauma in their own lives and behavior, they pass some of this legacy down to their children through their upbringing and also in their genes. Trauma can turn on traits that get passed on. Regardless of our ethnic or racial background, each of us has likely inherited a legacy of trauma. Trauma can shape individual personalities. It can influence our norms. It can influence our cultural norms sustained in families over generations and wider cultures. Many of the English settlers who colonialized this continent had experienced or witnessed extreme brutality. They fled starvation, overcrowding, and the Great Plague, and came from a place where people were regularly tortured, hung, or burned at the stake. They brought with them to the New World the trauma accumulated over 10 centuries of medieval violence. Over the last 4 centuries, these settlers and later immigrants from other parts of Europe and similar legacies enacted such trauma on the indigenous people and on the people brought from Africa as chattel slaves. Hurt people hurt people. But it is also true that healed people can heal one another and our society. Whether you're white, black, indigenous, Asian, or some combination, the healing you do during your lifetime will affect all of those around you and all of those who come after you. When we heal the trauma, we carry our own bodies and minds. When we heal the trauma, we carry in our own bodies and minds, whether it comes from our own life experiences or brought through our bodies and cultures of generations preceding us. We help to heal the whole and our beloved community. Thank you.
Thank you to Della and our sister church team for continuing to bring us these moments. Now we come to a time in our service for care and centering. Joys can be submitted online in the chat. They can be written out in the sanctuary. I've got one of those. They're at both doors, and you can hand them to an usher. Or they can be shared via online on our website before the service. So a few that I've got to share from you. Terry Lynn Brewer lets us know that she will be getting the cast off Wednesday. She says it is okay to laugh as I can feel the fun energy. She's happy about getting that cast off. She also says, though, I broke my neck after a fall. All is well. I'll be wearing a cervical collar for 6 weeks. And a joy from Sandy Bruins. After over 50 years of not seeing the light of day, as babies were born and they moved from place to place, Sandy says, I got more into advocating for women and for the arts than actually producing many of the fine art prints from 1968 to 1970, but they are now being showcased at the RBRG Gallery here in Omaha. The formal opening happened last weekend, Sandy says, without her, but there will be a closing party with the artists present on Saturday, December 5th. Details to come, and we'll share those as available. Sandy says that all are invited, vaccinated, and masked when not eating. Her work is political, satirical, and timely even now. For Sandy, it is a joy to have been rediscovered and affirmed. Mark Luskatoff shares concern for the climate our children will inherit, and joy that the Omaha City Council will vote on a resolution of support for a climate action plan for the Omaha metro area this Tuesday. The meeting starts at 2. You can show up in person or on Zoom. You can contact your city council member. Instructions for virtual participation can be found on the city clerk's webpage at the city website, and we'll include details and links in the Joys and Concerns e-blast early this week. I also have the sad news that Virginia Shoemate, a longtime member of this congregation, is in hospice care where she resides at Bickford. I know Carol was there yesterday. I'm gonna try to go today. You can send cards if you'd like to express concern, and they may be read to Virginia. So we'll hold her in our circle of care. I have a concern from Dave Richardson. Deeply concerned and saddened about the acquittal in Kenosha, Wisconsin, of the teenaged white supremacist vigilante provocateur who killed 2 unarmed Black Lives Matter protesters and severely wounded a 3rd person. Dave says the effect on efforts to create and work for a more just and equitable society has been damaged. Hate groups may be emboldened as a result of the verdict. A concern that I know is on many of our hearts. Let's see, and another joy. Denise Elaine says, I got to talk to my littles yesterday. I'm so proud of them and blessed to be their grandmother. Let me see what we have in the chat. I'm seeing love for Sanctuary Singers. It was good to hear you all again. And it looks like that's all that has come in from online. Our ratio of folks attending in person versus online is shifting a little bit more this way. I want to mention a couple of other things. Yesterday, you may know, was Transgender Day of Remembrance, annual time for over 20 years for saying the names and remembering the trans people that have been killed in the past year, which sadly is hundreds of trans people around the world murdered in acts of violence, including at least 46 people here in the United States. And lastly, a joy, booster shots are now available to all adults who want them, yay! And I know more kids are getting shots too, so that is very happy news. Thank you for sharing your joys and concerns as you have them. I think it helps us to know one another more and be more connected with each other, and I appreciate knowing about what's going on with you. As I mentioned earlier, also free hugs available upon request. I even have a button, free hugs. All right, you ready for some more participation? You can do this at home too. I'm going to invite the choir to come back up. Let's do centering a little bit more with our bodies today, a participatory form of centering. And we're going to lean into rhythm, which can be very healing. William is going to help us keep the rhythm. If you see his hands, follow them, because I'm going to invite all of you to participate too. And Peg's got a drum, and she's going to help us keep the beat as well. And I'm going to invite you to join in as we get going. But first, let's let William and Peg give us a nice, gentle beat that we can feel in our bodies, calming. Okay, you feel that? I invite you to join. You can do something soft with your body. You can snap. You can clap your leg if you want. Or you can tap your foot if you're sitting. If you want to do the offbeat, that's okay too. All right. I'm not hearing much from out there. Are you feeling the beat? There we go. All right, yeah, you can do it on here too. I'm going to sing a little bit, and you just keep that beat, okay? Stay with the choir. Keep on going. We have so many personal joys and challenges. We've heard some of them, and I know there's more unspoken. Let's hold in our circle of care and this rhythm of healing all of those who are healing bodies. Terry Lynn and her neck in that collar. Steve Rabine waiting for his lung transplant. You probably know others. Virginia Shoemate. And if you want to add a little rocking backward and forward, you can do that. Whatever's comfortable in your body, or you can sway side to side. Listen to your body. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me. Oh, my soul. Comfort me. Comfort me. Comfort me. Oh, my soul. And we're also grieving for all those lost to anti-trans violence over this last year. It was actually the deadliest year for this kind of violence in our country since we started keeping records. Each life precious, and we mourn them. Mourn with me. Mourn with me. Mourn with me. Oh, my soul. Mourn with me. Mourn with me. Mourn with me. Oh, my soul. And I join Dave Richardson and our Side with Love team, and I know many of you out there in being shaken by this verdict in Kenosha and the long history that precedes it of violence against Black and brown bodies, especially by police and by vigilantes, and now increasingly also by the allies who stand with them against this. And until Until this changes, we're going to keep saying Black Lives Matter. We're going to keep that banner on our building. And we're going to keep acting to try to make it different. Until then, I don't know about you, but for me, every headline brings fresh anguish and sometimes tears. And so cry with me if you want. Cry with me. Cry with me. Cry with me. Oh, my soul. Cry with me. Cry with me. Cry with me. Oh, my soul. Keep on going. We're going to continue to act as a congregation, as a community, and in the ways that each of us feels called to try to stop these traumas that keep echoing out in our world, including asking our legislators to support the National Equity Act. Our Side with Love team has shared information about that. And we have a rare opportunity this week to take action to help stop the harm to our planet, which is traumatizing many people through natural disasters. We can speak up for a metro area climate plan at Tuesday's Omaha City Council meeting. Will you act with me? Act with me. Act with me. Act with me. Oh, my soul. Act with me. Act with me. Act with me. Oh, my soul. Big breath. Thank you. This month's Share the Plate recipient is our partner church in Eastern Europe, not to be confused with our sister church, which is here in North Omaha. First Unitarian Church has had a partner church in the Unitarian village of Furtos Mortanos, Transylvania, Romania, since 1992. And for over 20 years now, the partner church team has also been sending funds to support the minister and help maintain the 110-year-old church and village parsonage. This is a relationship that connects us in friendship to a global network of Unitarians and to a force of liberal religion and values in Eastern Europe. Ways to give: there are boxes at the door as you come in or go out. Those online, there will be links in the chat. And if you'd like to, during the offertory music, those who are here can come forward. We need to get that basket back out front here, and put some money in the basket. And it will be shared between our partner church and our own congregation, unless you write on the memo line that it's for your pledge or some other purpose. And we have a gift of music as we give. Run, Forrest! Jenny called these words to her good friend Forrest Gump throughout their growing up, whenever his usual bullies began to come after him. In the blockbuster film starring Tom Hanks, little Forrest has to navigate a society that looks down on his below-average intellect, and initially on his legs clad in big, big metal braces. Later, he would deal with grief, direct combat and war, more grief, cultural upheaval, a struggling business, and still more grief. Forrest kept following Jenny's advice, trusting the instincts of his body to run, and he was able to move through all of these difficult experiences and come out unscathed. Today, most are aware that veterans of war have often suffered deep trauma. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, and other trauma symptoms are also common among those who have experienced rape, sexual abuse, or domestic violence. Trauma can imprint on someone who has been mugged, had an accident, or faced a natural disaster. Even events that we consider ordinary, like surgeries and invasive medical procedures, can overwhelm people. In one study, over half of orthopedic patients were diagnosed with PTSD following surgery. The source of trauma is not always physical in nature. Trauma can affect someone who receives shocking or tragic news or is abandoned by a loved one. Trauma can also come from witnessing someone else suffer violence, vicarious trauma. It gets into our memories and into our bodies, whether or not we were the target. Witnessing violence in your family, seeing the images of planes flying into the towers on 9/11 over and over on TV, seeing graphic videos of police violence and other violence against people of color over and over. All of this can affect us. And as we heard in the 8th principle moment, the imprint of trauma can be passed down generations, not only through culture, but through changes triggered in our genes. Whew. Simply naming all these forms of trauma may be creating a response in some of us right now. I invite you to stop and notice if you feel any agitation in your body or any hardening, and where. And if it feels good to you, as it often does to me, I invite you to shake it out of your head and your shoulders and your hands, wherever it wants to come out. Just let it go, loosen up what's tight. Ooh. If you just want to be still, that's okay too. And let's try one more thing. Rubbing the breastbone, this bone here in between your ribs, anywhere along the breastbone between your ribs. I especially like it right here under that hollow in the neck. We'll just go for about 20 seconds. You can just breathe with me, or you can rub. Slow. Ooh, that feels good. One of the essential ingredients, you can keep going if you want. One of the essential ingredients for coping with a potentially traumatic experience or healing from it is another trustworthy person being there with you. For little Forrest Gump, that rock was his mama, played by Sally Field. Forrest could feel Mama's love, so solid, day in, day out. The little sayings that she taught him stayed with him always, too. A stabilizing presence doesn't need to be someone central to our lives, though. In one of his books about trauma, Peter Levine, a stress scientist and clinician, shares the personal story of being struck by a car while crossing a street. Levine did not develop any lasting trauma from this accident, and he identifies one of the key reasons. In the immediate aftermath, before the ambulance arrived, a caring bystander came over to be with him. The stranger spoke gently, asking if she could help. She was a grounding presence by simply holding his hand and remaining calm and compassionate. Friends, family, a circle of trust in our church or a community support group can all be helpful. So can those in helping professions, therapists, social workers, and those who soothe our bodies with their healing hands. Whether we are young or old, the presence of mentors, sensitive teachers, or clergy we trust can make a real difference. And I'd like you to know that I have been developing my referral list, and I'm happy to support anyone who would like to connect with a therapist. One of the reasons that having connections with calm, caring others can be so helpful is that we influence each other's nervous systems. Someone who has been through trauma or carries deep generational trauma may have a jumpier nervous system. Just by being in the presence of someone who cares and whose own being is self-regulating, harmonious, stable, we can absorb some of that. It's not so different from how babies and young children calm down after a boo-boo or fall asleep at night more easily when they can get entrained biologically with their caregiver, skin to skin, heartbeat to heartbeat, breath to breath. Therapist Resmaa Menakem calls this settling. We can learn to settle our own nervous systems too. But when we are in danger, our lizard brain rightly takes over. It prompts us to fight, flee, or freeze, as an animal hunted by a predator might do. We are cut off from words and from our reasoning brain. Instead, we get a direct line to the instinctive intelligence of the body. I was interested to learn more about how this happens. It's through the vagus nerve. I'd never heard of that. I don't know if you had. The vagus nerve unifies the entire nervous system of a human being. It communicates between different parts of the body, reaching into the throat, heart, lungs, and all of the organs in our bellies, as well as the ancient brain stem. It also communicates from one person to another. Menakem calls it the soul nerve because of its deep and holistic effect on our well-being when settled. The soul nerve communicates through vibes and sensations. It regulates basic body functions. It is activated during trauma for our protection, but we can also use it to actively calm our nervous systems. More on that in a bit. As another trauma luminary, Bessel van der Kolk, writes, trauma results in a fundamental reorganization of the way mind and brain manage perceptions. You may be familiar with how trauma can show up in the body when it gets stuck. A strong startle response, nightmares, fragmented memories, the persistent feeling that something bad could happen at any moment. When trauma has not been metabolized, worked on out, and released from the body, a person can continue to be triggered into the same fight, flight, or freeze responses that were thwarted during the original emergency, and they can re-experience the same fright and pain. Or they may simply contract into a defensive posture against a hostile world and be increasingly split off from themselves. What does this look like from the outside? When people carrying trauma don't have good support and learn effective coping mechanisms, ways to calm the soul nerve, and until they are able to metabolize the trauma, they may do things that to onlookers appear self-sabotaging. People may self-medicate with substances to try to forget painful memories. Forrest Gump's friend, Lieutenant Dan, drinks heavily as this veteran wrestles with the demons of war and severe disability. People may accept poor treatment from others, even run toward risk and danger. Forrest's dearest friend, Jenny, does this in her journey from childhood sexual abuse to eventual healing. People with unprocessed trauma may become numb to the feelings in their bodies, which unfortunately cuts off joy as well as pain. They may hide from the world or lash out at whoever comes along. The good news is we have an incredible capacity for healing. Peter Levine describes the paradox of trauma thus: it has both the power to destroy and the power to transform and resurrect. Human beings have this innate ability to heal. We can and do pass down the generations not only trauma response, but also practices of resilience. Whoever we are, whatever has happened to us, we can learn how to settle our nervous bodies and move through the trauma into a fuller, more joyful life. Last winter, it was a hard winter for me, as I know it was for so many here. I've been waiting for so long to really be with you, in bodies, you know. I holed up with my family through the dark months, continued Zoom church, postponed making friends. I waited for the light of spring to return and for infections to fall and for buildings and bodies to open back up. And you know what I found myself doing that winter? Pretty regularly, spontaneously, mostly late at night, without understanding why. Rocking myself. It's like, oh yeah, I did this when I had a little baby. Rocking myself like I don't remember having done by myself, except after a big relationship breakup a long time ago. The body knows what it needs. Rocking is one of those soothing behaviors. Join me if you want. Rhythm is soothing too. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. How do we heal? That's the million-dollar question, right? How do we heal? I've mentioned hanging around supportive, settled people immediately after the trauma, or really any time later. We can also listen to our bodies. Levine says, in being able to harness our primordial and intelligent instinctual energies, we can move through trauma and transform it. And this is pretty literal. A common first step is to let your body complete whatever defensive action it was not able to complete during a trauma. Going back to his accident, Levine describes how his arm, immediately after this, wanted to come up in a certain way. I don't know if it was to block the car or to catch his fall. And he was able to do that in the moments after the accident with that calm person next to him. And this, too, helped prevent trauma from embedding in him. His body could complete the defensive action. Others who experienced an aborted instinct to flee may need to literally run when that energy comes. Forrest Gump was used to doing that as a kid hounded by bullies. He ran to safety again as a soldier when the bombs began to fall in Vietnam. It saved him and many others. When dearest Jenny came to stay with Forrest for a time of great happiness, and then one day she just disappeared, Forrest dealt with his deep grief, his sorrow and abandonment by running from coast to coast. He ran across every unique and beautiful landscape, really beautiful shots in the movie. He just ran until he had worked all those feelings out of his body. We don't ever actually see Forrest unable to escape danger by running, but for someone who had that experience, part of releasing trauma might be, if the urge comes, literally run. Go ahead and flee. Just let the body do what it was not able to do however long ago. They've studied this. It's a thing. I'm not sure what the character Jenny would have wanted to do to defend herself against molestation by her father. When the person hurting you is a person who is supposed to care about you and take care of you, well, that's about as bad as it gets. Jenny does have an angry energy locked up inside. At one point in adulthood, we see Jenny and Forrest out walking in Greenbow, their childhood home, and they end up at the rundown house where she had lived with her father until Child Protective Services came and took her to her grandmother's. Adult Jenny yells at that house, that empty house. She throws rocks at it, and she falls down in the mud, bereft and wailing. Forrest later shows his love for Jenny by having her father's house bulldozed to the ground. It's visceral. As for Lieutenant Dan, Forrest's friend who survived the war with most of his body, if not for years his soul, Dan's great breakthrough comes when he is with his stalwart buddy. Forrest, I think, has a settling effect on Dan that does put him in a better position to heal. Dan and Forrest have started a shrimping business, and they are having a heck of a time making a go of it. If you've seen the movie, you may remember their nets keep coming up with like 2 shrimp in them. When a great storm overtakes them one day out on the Gulf, Lieutenant Dan does something that's counterintuitive to the viewer. He climbs up high on the mast, facing the wind. Never mind that he has hardly any legs to help him do this. He uses his strong arms. He climbs up there and he has it out with God. "Come and get me!" he shouts into the storm. And when the storm breaks, we see Dan swimming in the smooth water, peace at last spread over his face like we've never seen it in this character. It's the turning point for him, and it's deeply embodied. This healing's happening through what he's doing with his body and his experience. So if you have the urge to do something with your body, your muscles, your breathing, your voice, whatever it is, and you can safely do so, do it, literally or symbolically. Trust your instincts. As the child in the story for all ages reminded us, ignoring trauma doesn't work, at least not long term. To sweep heavy things under the rug or try to get rid of them or pretend them away, This may help us take a rest for a while, which we may need, but ultimately won't help us move through trauma to the other side. Nor can we think our way out of trauma, no matter how smart we may be or how hard we try. Our thinking brains didn't get us into this, and they can't get us out of it. We can use our advanced brains to observe ourselves, to be gently curious, to just notice, and that will definitely help. But trauma resides in the body, and that's where healing ultimately will take place. Some forms of therapy, like EMDR, work with the nervous system to process trauma. Body work, massage, Reiki, Rolfing, craniosacral therapy, myofascial release, and you may know others, can be tremendously helpful. We can do things for our bodies all by ourselves, too. Yoga, Tai Chi, dancing, walking, biking, and spending time in nature. These are some of the physical activities that can settle the nervous system and aid healing. Meditation, centering prayer, and practices of mindfulness can also help. And let's not forget loving touch. A foot rub from a partner, cuddling with a child, petting an animal companion can all be healing. Hugs from our friends can truly be healing to our bodies. And don't forget my free hugs. We have to talk about COVID-19. I'm going into overtime, but I think we need to. We can't talk our way through this trauma either. But we should recognize that that's what it is. Natural disasters create trauma, and so do common medical events, as we've heard. Well, this pandemic has been a slow-moving medical disaster. The uncertainty around it, of our personal risk and how to contain it and what we can do and when it will be over as part of this collective trauma. I think one of the things that has been hardest about the pandemic, besides all the unknowns, is that many of the actions we might normally take to calm our bodies have shifted over from the column of soothing things to the column of potentially dangerous things. Being with groups of people, even dear ones who might help us regulate our nervous systems. Touching, singing, breathing. Regulating our breathing is one of the powerful ways of tapping into the vagus nerve and calming our nervous systems, but a lot of us have been nervous about our breathing for a year and a half. Humming and singing are ancient and primordial ways of soothing the soul. Going to church, going to yoga class, going to the pool or the gym, all these things that are foundational ways of settling ourselves, often with each other. We have taught our soul nerve these past 18 months that these things are dangerous. Because in a pandemic, they are, at least to the unvaccinated or those most at risk. I've noticed for myself that as the pandemic progressed and I got vaccinated, and I could no longer sustain the not doing of all the things, of regarding these things I love, like singing, as dangerous, I have had to consciously retrain my body, my nervous system, when something is safe again for me. Do you know what I mean? Bessel van der Kolk observes, trauma is not just an event that took place sometime in the past. It is also the imprint left by that experience on the mind, brain, and body. I can feel the imprint in me by the prolonged disruption and uncertainty of the pandemic. Can you feel it? I see nods. It has taken me some time to get comfortable being in person with groups of people that are not my family, even outside at first and then inside. It has taken me some time to reacclimate to speaking to a group without a mask. I think it's important for nonverbal communication and for those who need to read lips, so I'm doing it. And I got boosted. I still use my hand sanitizer, but not as often as I used to. I still find myself holding my breath in the grocery store if a child who is coughing without a mask walks by me, which happens. And then I remind myself that not only I, but now every member of my household, thank goodness, is vaccinated. So, okay, self, you're okay. It's okay. It's not in the brain. It's in the nervous system. It's in the body. All right, last part here. Remember last spring when we all thought it was almost over? Ha. My colleague, Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf, offered church leaders some insight into how trauma of this time may affect congregations. See if you recognize any of these things in yourself and others here at First Unitarian, or perhaps in your workplace or family. Ways trauma shows up. It takes a lot more energy to do normal tasks. You can nod if you want to about any of these. It takes more energy to do normal tasks. Thank you, I'm not alone. The sense of time can be distorted. Oh, when was that meeting? What day is it? People have a harder time taking in information. It doesn't stick as well in the brain. Pandemic brain, popular articles describe this as when your thinking just slows down and you don't process as well. At church, and as we have seen everywhere else in society, people want to go back to the old normal. We miss it. And there may be a sense of urgency about doing things and doing them right and doing them now. When we are back meeting in person, and it isn't the same, and it's not the same, is it? It's not the same. People may experience a kind of unraveling. Your body doesn't like this. People will be feeling tired, depressed, and exhausted, including the leaders making decisions on behalf of others. Okay, I'm looking at you, staff and reopening task force, and I'm looking at you, parents, and all those others who are leaders. So that's all normal stuff right now, even for really balanced people who have lived fortunate lives. And for those who have past traumas, it may be worse. They may be triggered. The reality is it will take years for communities like congregations to heal from the prolonged disruption of the pandemic. The timeline of healing may vary for each individual and family, but for a community like this one, it will likely be slow. Church time almost always is slow, right? We don't have to rush. In fact, with the slowness of our brains and all that is happening as our bodies process, it will probably help our collective healing if we take our time. That's one reason we have reintroduced some things gradually as we have reopened for worship, like having some of our singers back. We need to give our bodies time to adjust. And the other million-dollar question, of course, is when will it be over? And I don't know, but we will get through it together. I'm here. Our caring team is here. A lot of caring people are here. You can look around. You can page through the screen there. We have small groups that can be a lifeline, including now our music groups for the vaccinated. So here's what I'm asking you, inviting you to do. Keep taking care of yourselves. Be gentle. Let's keep coming together in this community in whatever way is safe for you. Let me know if you want a referral to a therapist. If you need permission to go get a massage or whatever will bring you some joy and healing and connection, consider it given. We all have to recalibrate our inner risk calculus as our own circumstances change and the community situation around us keeps shifting. But we don't have to be alone in that journey. We can help settle each other. As we heal from the individual traumas of our past and the historic traumas of our society, including the one we're still in, let us listen to our bodies and move through it with intention and tenderest care. So may it be. Amen. In this season of Thanksgiving, let us remember to give thanks for the intelligence of our bodies, for the caring people already in our lives, and for others ready to help. Let us give thanks for the resilience passed down generations, for the plasticity of our brains, which makes healing always possible. And let us give thanks for the life pulsing through our veins, because we get to be here on this earth experiencing all the good things life has to offer. Let us go forth in gratitude. Amen. And I invite you at home, if you lit a candle, to extinguish it as I do so here as well. A few announcements before we have breakout groups for those online who want them, and coffee hour outside for those here who want them. I mentioned the last couple of weeks that we were looking at a transition from Zoom to YouTube for our streaming platform. That's still what I'm anticipating based on our smart tech folks, but we decided to slow that down too, because we want to make sure we all have time to work out the bugs, and we're probably even going to have a little video to show you how to subscribe and how to use this as a way to join worship. So watch for that. There's no more pre-registration for worship or for RE. We do have hot beverages outside, and masks are not required outside at this time. You could certainly wear one if you want to. If you love having coffee hour and you want to help keep it happening, let Kim or Brian Callahan know, and you can join our coffee crew. And let's see. Last thing I wanted to mention was, let's keep checking in with each other before offering handshakes and hugs and high fives, because everyone's comfort level and risk level is different. But like I said, free hugs from me if you want them. All right, thank you everyone for being here.